Now for Raising the Bar, Greater RVA's premier Law Talk radio show. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
Good morning and welcome to Raising the Bar, Greater RVA's Law Talk radio show. This is attorney Colleen Quinn of Locke & Quinn, and today I will be interviewing my client Keith Lippa on building a family 3 different ways. Keith has created his family, or grown his family, let's say, by one child through foster care adoption, another child through private placement adoption, and his third child, his daughter, through gestational surrogacy. So this is going to be a great show. And before we get started, remember that Raising the Bar Law Talk Radio has a webpage with all of the podcasts that we have done over the past 7 to 8 months. Every Wednesday at 9 a.m. we feature a different legal topic. And the raisingthebarlawtalk.com website also has a really good listing of resources, pro bono, low-cost resources for specialty groups, and also remember that all of the videos also are posted on the Locke & Quinn Facebook page. So if you don't get to hear the whole show today, go to the Locke & Quinn Facebook page and catch the rest of it later, or go to the Raising the Bar Law Talk radio show webpage, and you can catch the podcast on the iTunes series there. So good morning, Keith.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. It's a rainy, dreary day with a lot of traffic, so hopefully we'll have a lot of listeners listening in. So let's talk about these wonderful, wonderful children that you have, and what prompted you to want to be a dad at some point.
Well, I've always wanted to be a dad. Just growing up, just knowing that you're taking care of other humans and being able to raise them from kids all the way up through adulthood and try to provide direction for them. It's just been a gut feeling of mine that I knew I wanted to be a dad from so long. I actually started the process when I was 25.
Wow.
When I lived in Delaware, Philadelphia area.
Okay.
And I started looking at adoption through that avenue. And I always wanted to have my family involved with the process. And so once I moved back to Virginia in 2007, I really started picking up the process a lot more hard to try and make that dream come true.
Yeah. So because as a single dad, you don't have
Yes.
as many options, right? Yeah, and I've got single mom clients, and they can go to a sperm donor bank or whatever, and as with a single dad, it's a little bit harder to figure out how am I gonna do this, right?
I am missing one key component,
Right, exactly.
And it's probably the most critical component.
So what concerns did you have about being a single dad and doing this, setting out to build your family, without having a spouse or a partner?
So, I grew up in a single family household. My mom was a single parent. My parents divorced when I was probably 3 years old.
Okay.
And so my mom was a single parent, and she did an amazing job raising myself and my brother growing up. And we had a huge family support network then because all of my family's in the Richmond area. So my grandparents were heavily involved in my life. We lived with them in the summertime. They came to every sporting event that we had. And I knew that was the things that I cherish and remember from my childhood. And I want that for my children. So when I finally moved back to the Richmond area where my family was here, I wanted to start having a family. And then that way my mom could be involved with my kids, just like my grandparents were involved with me. And so I knew it was going to be very difficult being a single parent. But I knew because I have such an extensive family network here in the Richmond area and they're heavily involved and very supportive, I knew I would be able to make it happen. But I can definitely say it is the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life is being a single parent raising one kid, much less 2 or 3 kids and a dog.
Yeah, throw the dog in there too. Yeah. So, as they say, it takes a village, and having the relatives, having the other people there that can give you that break that you need. I remember, I was divorced, so I had my twins most of the time, and thank God for my parents and being able to send them off, for a week with the rents, and also when my mother would sometimes come and just clean the house for me and make dinner. And, you know, it was just such a special thing.
Yes.
You know, so, so you clearly have a great support network with your family, and I'm assuming you've got friends that help out as well.
Yes. Yeah. Family, friends. I have such a large family here. I
Mhm.
generally rely on them heavily, but also I have friends that are available to help out quite a bit that are really close with the kids
Yeah.
as well.
So let's talk about your first son, Eli,
Mhm.
and he was adopted out of foster care. So let's talk about that experience. What you're starting to figure out, how am I going to do this? And so clearly at some point you looked into what was involved to be a foster parent.
That's right. So becoming a foster parent is a pretty extensive process. So you generally have to go through a training. It's like a 3-hour training every week for 3 months, 9 weeks, I think, total.
It's
And
like a side job.
it is.
Yeah.
And it is actually an amazing training just to go through it. So even folks that are not considering foster care, it's a great training to go through just for parenting.
Okay.
You know, they talk about things that you can and shouldn't say. I've also read up a lot on it, on books and adoption books and surrogacy books, and what the kids kind of go through, and you know what they look forward to in their life. And by going through the training in foster care, in the foster care system, it helped prepare me to be a parent. It was an amazing training, and it kind of teaches you how to be a parent, things you can say, shouldn't say. You know, the biological parents of the kids are always going to be present in the kids' lives. So even if they were abused or neglected, you never say anything or talk negatively about their birth parents,
Right.
regardless of the situation, because as soon as you do that, you're going to lose the child. And so by having that training, it gave me a good foundation in order to start being a parent. And I actually had a couple foster kids prior to Eli coming to live with me that I got to raise for a certain period of time as well, to kind of get a little bit experience under my belt.
Right. It's a little training.
It was.
There.
And one thing that you learn from the foster care system is all the childs are different, and how you approach them are different, and it all depends on their form of abuse. So for kids, so the 2 foster kids that I had prior to Eli coming to me, they were exposed to alleged sexual abuse and physical
Wow.
abuse. And so you handle them a lot differently than you handle Eli, because when Eli came to me, he was more so, his form of abuse was emotional abandonment abuse.
Okay.
So if you look between the 2 kids, my first 2 that I had, loud noises freaked them out, you know, stuff like that. They could be alone all day long and play in their room all day long and not have a problem, but loud noises and anything like that would shut them down. Whereas Eli, you could, you know, bang pots right by his head and it wouldn't faze him at all, but he would not go play in his room by himself. Like, he would always want to be around. So it's just interesting to see the different dynamics of what these kids experience, but it's also good, you know, for parents to kind of get that breath to see it, basically teach you how to parent.
So which county did you do the training through?
Henrico County.
Okay.
I did the training, and then the kids actually came to me. They lived in Goochland.
And they do a pretty thorough background check on
They
you
do
too.
background checks, home studies. It's just like a full adoption process that's done through the foster care system.
So how did Eli come to you?
So with foster care, there's two basic things that you can do. You can do respite, or you can do full-blown foster care. So respite is more like weekend babysitting, for lack of better words. And then full-blown foster care is you have them full-time, you know, around the clock until they go back to their birth family, because that's the obvious goal of the foster care system. Eli used to be, I used to do respite for him because he was staying with a single female at the time. And so when she needed a break, he would come to stay with me for the weekend. And it was a good balance between a male and female figure in Eli's life. And so ultimately, the situation presented itself where that individual was not able to adopt Eli.
Okay.
And so we kind of, you know, coordinated with the county, and the county basically decided that Eli could come live with me in hopes of adopting him.
And
so
how old was he when you first started doing respite with him?
So he was 4 years old when I first started doing respite. He came to live with me when he was 5, and then I adopted him when he was 6.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he, how old is he now?
He is now 11.
Okay. Wow.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
5 years.
They grow up fast.
They do.
And so does Eli still have contact with his biological family, or what's that relationship like?
Yeah. So one of the important things that, you know, we learned in the training, and also things that we've read over a series of books, is if it's a healthy relationship, it's good to have the child, they want to know their biological family. They want to know where they came from. And with my other kids, we have that, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, later on in this session. But with Eli, I don't know his biological family.
Okay.
Because I don't know the context or the terms that he was placed into foster care. I don't know if it was voluntary or involuntary. So I don't know anything about his biological family. So that's one component of his life that we will never have.
Yeah, and
unfortunately,
that's going to be tough. But in terms of how to deal with that, especially when you have siblings who do have a better idea of their their biological background, the way in which they came into the world, et cetera. And interestingly enough, I had I'm on Ancestry.com, and we're seeing more and more connections through that. Interestingly enough, last night I was contacted by a person that had been placed out by one of my father's cousins, who was trying to track down, her biological family. And we're starting to see more and more of that. So I imagine that with all the, the 23andMe and Ancestry.com, et cetera, at some point, and, the SoundX registry, at some point, Eli's going to be trying to track that down or get his foster care file opened up so that, and in many cases, I'm opening up closed adoption files for medical reasons. I know that DSS tries to do the best job they can of capturing as much, genetic and medical history for the child.
Right.
But still, when you don't really have that much information about your biological family, that's a lot of medical history that's missing.
Yep, the medical history, and then what I have done is I have gotten Eli's birth records.
Okay.
And so, if you read through the 40, 50 some odd pages of that, you can see handwritten text. And, I know his biological mother's name, and there was a phone number that was listed when she came into the hospital several years ago. And so I've thought about trying to contact them, but it scares me because not knowing the context in which Eli was placed into care,
right?
I don't know if I'm ready to broach that.
Yeah, right. And also, you don't know what the response is going to be on the other side.
Yeah, because what makes it hard, and I do feel bad for Eli because, when they get into school, they have to do projects like bring a baby picture of you and stuff like that. I don't have any of that for Eli. Wow. So it's hard, when he's in school, all of his classmates have pictures of when they were babies.
Right.
I don't have any of that for Eli. And so that's stuff like that is emotionally hard for kids, especially when you already have a kid that's emotionally abused.
Right.
Originally, it just makes the situation worse.
Well, I know you're an excellent dad, though, and especially with all that training, et cetera, you're most equipped to deal, because those are tough issues. I mean, really, not having a baby picture and not having that history when other kids do, that's a lot for you to have to work with him on that, So let's talk a little bit about your second son, AJ, because he came into your family through a different route.
He did. He was true private adoption.
And how did that come about? And how did you? So you've already gone the foster care route. You've done all this massive training. You know what that system's like. How did you then say, okay, now I'm going to learn about private adoption and explore this avenue?
So a lot of those avenues actually were running parallel at the time.
Okay.
So I had already gone through the private adoption route, was very familiar with that. I'd actually already entered private adoption prior to having Eli. So we were working with an agency down in North Carolina that was a national agency that was trying to match birth mothers with intended parents. And I had done that process maybe 3-4 years before Eli or AJ ever even came into the picture. And I was kind of, I'm always optimistic. I'm an optimistic person, but I was just under the impression, it was one of those agencies where birth mothers have a look at all these intended parents, and then they basically pick who they match with. And then the way the process works is if you had a birth mother that came in that basically was like, I want to adopt my child, and, I'm to whatever family, I'm not really picky on the family that they go to, then they would pull from whoever was, quote unquote, in the book the longest.
Right.
And so I just assumed that was going to be me. I was like, how many people are going to want to adopt their kid to a single male when there's all these 2-parent families
out
that
there
are out there looking for children? And I got into the book, and actually on my birthday several years ago, I had a birth mother call me from Williamsburg, and she really liked me. We met, and we actually matched.
So she didn't match though through the North Carolina agency, right?
That's right. We ended up doing it as a parental placement.
Right, as
adoption.
a private, so
Private
as opposed to an agency adoption.
Mhm.
So how did she find you?
Through the agency's website is how
Okay.
she found me.
Okay.
And then they contacted me directly. And then, through consultation with you, the agency got their fee for the match process. But then
Right.
we did everything else
As a
as a private adoption
right.
through Virginia and Henrico County.
Yeah, so the birth mom was able to place with you directly rather than placing with the agency who
That's
then
right.
placed with you, which more and more, we're seeing more and more birth moms wanting to do that direct parental placement.
Okay.
There's a feeling of having a little bit more control, by doing that direct placement in many ways. And so we're seeing a lot of the private placements happening and some of the agency placements dropping in numbers. Although there's some birth moms that prefer going to an agency and saying, "Hey, agency, Mr. Agency, you pick out the person." It depends on that biological mom's desire for involvement. Some want to be really truly involved and get to meet the adoptive family, and others are like, I just want to place this child and move on and not have quite as much involvement.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what that was like to first meet this woman that likes you and is thinking about placing her child with you.
It was a interesting process. She was very young. It was an exciting meet. We met, and it was just we had corresponded back and forth several times through email or text and pictures and whatnot. And then we met in person, and it just seemed to click. It was a good fit.
Was she pregnant at this time?
She was pregnant at the time, maybe 5 months pregnant at the time.
Okay.
And so, so myself and both the birth mother and the birth father, we met, and we just had a good connection, and it worked out good. So we just started developing a relationship from there, and then basically, she said she selected, I want you to, raise the child, and so that's when we quote unquote matched, and then we started working with you guys through that process. But it was a very emotionally draining process and an emotional roller coaster, because it's this unknown of, this person can change my life by allowing me to adopt their baby,
right?
But it's totally their decision, and they could say, no, I want to go with
somebody else,
right?
Instead. And you're kind of going through this beauty contest process, or am I going to get selected?
Yes, it was.
I actually had clients who were selected by a birth mother in South Carolina. Was it South Carolina? I think it was South Carolina. And this birth mother and birth father were specifically looking for adoptive families that were athletic, and so they had like three adoptive families that they brought in to interview. And these clients of mine happened to win the beauty pageant, But and when we do it in my own office, I'll have birth moms come in, and they'll go through the profiles, like the profile that you've done, and they'll say, I want to interview, these three potential adoptive, parents, and it's nerve-wracking to kind of go through that interview process and wonder, are they going to pick me? Are they going to stick with me? Am I the one that is meant to be the parent to this child? And so it was good that you guys. And normally they'll say, everyone will say that there's just kind of this feeling of clicking, where it just seems to be right.
Feel.
Yeah,
it's a gut feel. But I'm a very optimistic person, and it's out of my hands. I just try to present myself in a true fashion,
right,
and be honest and upfront with them, and I hope that they like me and that they will choose me. And in my cases, it's worked out phenomenally.
Did you get your mom involved?
My mom was involved after we had already met several times.
Okay.
We had met and matched, and then our families kind of connected because it wasn't an open adoption. They were from the Williamsburg area. I'm from the Richmond area, so it's fairly close. And so myself and my mom would go down there to meet them for dinner or something, and so it was a nice developing that relationship was a good process.
So when AJ was born, how old was Eli?
Eli was 5 at the time, and AJ, I got AJ right from birth from the
Okay. So
hospital.
they're about 5 years apart.
They're 5 years apart.
Okay.
And then 5 years apart between AJ and my daughter.
And your daughter. Okay. And what's the relationship like between Eli and AJ?
Oh, it's great. They're great kids. I mean, they are tremendous helpers for me. They're great big brothers. They get along great. They have that normal sibling banter back and forth, but it's very minor. Very minor. There's such an age difference between them. It's like they have their own set of friends, but they can still be brothers and supportive of one another together and still play together.
So, what is your relationship with AJ's biological family then?
So, with it being an open adoption, we do have that open relationship. So, we'll text pictures, calls, stuff like that, and they'll even do visits. They've come up to my house several times to, visit with AJ, and I let them basically have that time with him, and they can help him get ready for bed and read him bedtime stories and eat dinner with us. And it's just like a family unit. So it works out great. And AJ knows that, that I'm his daddy,
right,
and that there's, that he's a special kid, that he has another sets of parents. So he has mommy Hannah and daddy Jonathan.
Okay. I was wondering what he called them.
And so, and the same thing with Eli, with his, foster mom, he calls her mommy Katina, it's the mommy and then their name.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different. I mean, it's not like, they know that they're their birth mom, but I'm quote unquote
your
daddy.
dad, though, right?
I'm dad.
Yeah, you're the guy, the main guy. So Eli still has a relationship with his former foster mother. Then
He does.
Oh, that's great.
He has some contact with her because that's all he knows as his mom. It's not his biological mom, but he's been with her since I think he was 1.5 or 2. And so that's all he knows as his mom. He doesn't even know his biological mom. So his foster mom is who he considers his mom. So it's nice that they still have some sort of contact.
Yeah,
as well.
Absolutely. So with AJ's parents, now we have binding post-adoption continued contact agreements. Is there a binding agreement in AJ's case, or is it just more kind of an informal arrangement?
I can't remember because it was so long ago. I thought we had some sort of binding contract where we said we would have ongoing contact and pictures on a certain frequency. And I think the frequency that we had contracted was, once a couple times a year.
Yeah. And what you're actually doing.
And we actually do it on a much more frequent basis. I mean, she'll text me just out of the blue and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And then so I'll text back, or, I'll take a picture of the kids, and this is a funny picture. So I'll send it to, the birth, to AJ's birth family,
right,
mom, dad, and grandmother. And it's just a great relationship that we have.
Which is really wonderful because it's just more people to love the child.
It is.
And then AJ's always known his birth story,
mm-hmm.
And so there's no secrecy. You never have this issue of having to tell him, "Oh, by the way, you're adopted." Yeah. Instead, it's just what he's always known, which is such a wonderful thing. We are about to cut to the break, and this is Raising the Bar, Greater RVA's Law Talk Radio Show. Today, I'm talking to Keith Lippa about building a family 3 different ways. If you have any questions about how to build a family through adoption or surrogacy, call into the show at 804-454-1366.
Greater Richmond's premier Law Talk Radio Show. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
Well, that's RN News. I'm Wally Hines in Washington. French President Emmanuel Macron set to deliver an historic address to a joint meeting of Congress next hour. That follows yesterday's whirlwind meetings at the White House and the pomp and ceremony from last night's state dinner, where he was toasted by the president for the enduring relationship with the U.S. A big case before the Supreme Court today, the justices hearing arguments over President Trump's travel ban. The issue is the extent of presidential powers. The administration is asking the court to reverse lower court rulings striking down that ban. In another big issue, a federal judge has ruled the Trump administration's decision to end the DACA program that protected some young immigrants from deportation. He has ruled against that, giving them 90 days to offer a new argument. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the full Senate has the votes to confirm Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State. McConnell says the country will be lucky to have him in office. This is SRN News.
Hey, is $20 too much to spend to get out of pain? If so, I guess you're not in that much pain. This is Michael Medved again to sing the praises of a 100% drug-free solution to lowering your pain levels. It's called Relief Factor, and the 3-week quick start for only $19.95. My wife and friends have found relief, and so can you. Your back, neck, shoulder, hip, or knee pain can all be reduced or even eliminated with the help of Relief Factor at relieffactor.com or by calling 800-500-8384, relieffactor.com.
Are you a responsible person who finds yourself growing deeper in credit card debt? Then get ready for a toll-free number that will put you on a path to financial recovery. Trinity Debt Management will consolidate your accounts and work with your creditors. You'll save thousands and become debt-free for keeps. If your debt has you down, we should talk. Call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976. 1-800-990-6976. 1-800-990-6976.
Your Chesterfield County Colonial Heights Crime Solvers program wants to help the Colonial Heights Police Department solve a rash of larcenies from cars. Throughout the week of April 11th, numerous cases occurred in several North End Colonial Heights neighborhoods. The thefts took place during the nighttime hours. Fortunately, an at-home surveillance camera took a picture of a suspect. He can be described as a young, dark-complexioned black male who had a thin mustache and goatee. You can see his picture at crimesolvers.net or on Facebook at crimesolverscch. And if you recognize the suspect, or if you have information on any unsolved crime in or person wanted by Chesterfield or Colonial Heights, you can submit a tip through Crime Solvers. Call the hotline at 748-0660 or use the P3 Tips app. Either method will allow you to stay anonymous, and if your tip helps, you could receive a cash reward. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and take the time to solve the crime.
Now, back to Raising the Bar. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
We are back. This is Colleen Quinn of Locke and Quinn, and we are doing Raising the Bar, Greater RVA's Law Talk Radio Show today. Today I am interviewing my client Keith Lippa about building a family 3 different ways. Keith, as a single dad, has managed to build his family, first of all, adopting Eli through foster care, and then adopting AJ through a private placement adoption, and then having his daughter through gestational surrogacy. And so as a single father who loves being a dad,
Yes.
and very, very much wanted to be a dad, you have managed to go down all of these different paths to build a family, which is fascinating. And if anybody has any questions about the process of building a family one of these ways, please call into the show at 804-454-1366. So we've talked about the adoption of Eli through foster care. We've talked about the adoption of AJ through private placement adoption. And then you decide, okay, I would like to have another child, right?
Let's try the third route.
Try the third route. So you did all that training with foster care, and you did all that research with the private placement and agency adoption. And now you say, well, why not surrogacy?
Why not?
Yeah. So what did you do to become educated and decide, I think I'm going to look at this surrogacy route to have a child?
It was actually one of my friends from high school that actually put that bug in my ear.
Okay.
To be honest, it was I was looking at child number 3, and I had just, one of the things I think that you and I had talked about is, just communicate out to everybody that you're looking for another child.
Right. You just don't know where that gestational carrier might come out of
right.
the woodwork.
And there could be a lead from your past that you didn't know about. And so I sent out a Facebook blast several years ago, and it just said, hey, the Lippa family is looking to grow by one more. If you know of anybody that's considering adoption or surrogacy, then, private message me and let me know, and we'll start talking. And I was more so thought I was going to go the adoption route.
Okay.
Because, for surrogacy has its own challenges, financial especially.
Right.
And one of my high school friends we had started talking about potential surrogacy. And so, she would be interested in carrying. And so we just started a dialogue back and forth. And then it started putting in my head, like, maybe I could do the surrogate route. I could try that. She and I were really good friends in high school. We ultimately decided not to do the surrogacy. And she actually moved out of state back to Texas, and it just wasn't the right fit or the right time for us.
Okay.
And so then, you and I had met and
Right.
talked about some of the options that we have with the surrogate route. And through your office, we had connected a lead. And we actually, I looked at this one profile, and it was just something that felt like this is a good fit for me. It's a good connection. And so, the more and more I read up on the family, I really liked them. And so, we contacted each other and set up a meeting. And so we met, myself and the husband and wife, we met, and it was just like an instant click. It was an instant connection. It was that gut feel, kind of the same thing with when I met AJ's birth family. And so we talked, had a good relationship, and it's just a all around good fit. I'm actually surprised that we never knew each other beforehand.
Right, because you actually ended up crossing paths in
Several
so many
paths,
ways. Yeah.
in so many ways. From high school, we went to rival high schools. With the mother and I went to rival high schools. The father and I went to rival high schools on the other side. We played soccer. I'm surprised we probably played against each other. And we went to college together at the same time. We have a lot of the same mutual friends in common. And so it was just surprising that we never crossed paths.
Right.
And when we met, they have 2 kids who are just about my 2 kids' age. So, their oldest son is close to Eli's age, and their youngest son is close to AJ's age. So it was just a good fit. So when we get the families together, the 2 older boys play together, the 2 younger boys play together, and then we share this common connection, Allie. So it just by meeting with them and talking with them, it was that gut feel, that instant connection that we're like, oh, this is a match. And then so we started working through the process for how to actually make it come, make it go to fruition.
Right, because now you don't have there's not a child in existence.
That's
as there was with Eli. There's not a child in the oven.
That's right.
There's no pregnancy yet.
Yep.
As there was with AJ, and so now you're looking at, okay, I have the host womb. I've met the woman that's willing to do this for me, but now we have to go through this process of actually creating a child, and as we mentioned before, a single mom, she can go to a sperm bank,
Yep.
et cetera. But as a single dad, you go, okay, well, I guess I need an egg.
Yes. An egg in
to
an
make
oven.
this happen. So how did you go about picking out the donor egg?
So that was an interesting process as well. 2 of my friends that I actually know in college that I work with right now, they had ultimately had their 2 children through IVF. They had some complications, and so they actually ended up having their child through IVF. So I talked to them a lot about that process, and talked with them about their doctor and who they used, and pros and cons, if they liked him or not. And so I set up a consultation with their doctor. They highly recommended him. So I met with him. And
for folks that don't know, IVF is in vitro fertilization, which is basically, the test tube baby.
That's right.
You make
Yep.
you make the embryo in the petri dish.
Yep.
Okay.
And so we met with the IVF doctor, myself and the surrogate had met with them and just started talking about how that process works. And then they basically have an IVF clinic or
Yeah. And they had an egg bank. They
have an egg bank there.
So they already had eggs that were already frozen, or did you have to pick a live donor?
So there's so many different options that you
Right.
can choose. You can pick a live donor, a friend or somebody through their network,
Right.
that can do that process, and it has certain costs associated with it and certain risks. And then you can choose from the frozen eggs that are folks that have already donated eggs, and you can pick from them, and they have a lot of profiles you can go through. Those are the 2 main routes that you can choose. I had contacted one of my best friends just to see if that was something that she would be interested in, maybe like a live to create an egg. And, we're amazing friends, really close. And we decided that it just wasn't the right fit to do that. And so I started looking into the egg bank,
Right.
and you look through all these profiles, and they have such detailed information on all these donors. They have so many donors, different heights, intellectual scores, athletics, family history. I mean, they have this full-blown 40-page plus report on each person.
Okay.
And so sifting through all of those, that was a very tedious process. And so I'm an engineer and I'm very detail oriented. And so I went through, like, one night, I went through the full 40-page profile, and I put, like, their information, not say pros and cons, but there were certain things that kind of connected with me and certain things that I really wasn't as keen on. So, I set up a
See
list
you
like
charting
that.
this out.
It
Yeah.
was. That's how engineers work. Pros and cons list.
Right.
And so I did that for several of the profiles, and I kind of narrowed it down to 6. And then towards the end, I kind of settled on this one. And so I had contacted the clinic and said, this is the one that I want to choose. And so going through that process for creating the child, with my sperm and the frozen egg, we kind of worked through that process together in order to make it happen.
How many embryos were created?
We actually had 5 that
Okay.
were created. The normal for frozen is 6.
Okay.
This donor was a quote unquote popular donor, so she only had 5 eggs left. And so she had 5 eggs left, and so we fertilized 5.
Okay.
And then 1 got placed in in our surrogate, and that one took.
Okay, so you still have 4 embryos.
Unfortunately, the other 4 did not make it.
Oh, they didn't make it.
Yep.
Wow, through the thawing process.
Yeah. So we
wow.
have, like, so we fertilized 5, and the doctor, the normal is 6, and the doctor says it's not uncommon to lose 2 and maybe have 4 stuck. And so we fertilized 5. We had immediately lost 1, so we had 4.
Okay.
1 of those 4 got placed in. 1 was questionable, and the other 2 just didn't make it through to whatever they call it.
Well, the blastocyst size.
Blastocyst.
Yeah, so the number of cell division. Some just don't grow.
And so that's what happened. So the one that actually took, the one that was placed in the surrogate, actually took, and I'm very thankful that that happened the first time.
that one embryo worked.
Yes.
So a lot of folks don't realize, but when you pick a live donor, then now you've got to pay for the costs of, she goes on medication, and then she's got to go through this retrieval process, and then you have the risk of not knowing how many eggs will be retrieved.
That's right.
And so there's a lot of certainty when you go with the banked egg, because you already know the eggs are there, they're already banked, and it's already a sunk cost.
That's right.
So it tends to be a little less expensive.
And it's actually more expensive with the live donor as well, because they have to do the medication and the shots and produce the eggs. And like you said, sometimes some could produce 3 or 4 eggs, and some could produce 20 eggs.
Right.
And you never know, but you don't fertilize all 20 anyway. So just balancing that out.
The differences between surrogacy and adoption, it's like, so with the adoption, the risk is, are they going to actually place the child?
That's right.
But the child exists or is in the womb, Where surrogacy, the big risk is this going to work?
Right.
And thank goodness that one embryo made it.
Yes.
Because now you have an Allie.
Yes. I am very thankful.
Who's so adorable. So we've got a caller on the line. Katie, are you there? You're live?
Hi, yes.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. So I was just kind of wondering, listening to Keith talk about all these different ways that he's, managed to be a parent. You kind of have the whole realm of experience. Is there one that you would recommend to people trying to build their family? It sounds like they're all pretty positive experiences. Is there anything that you would, tell people, like, oh, maybe stay away from this one, or definitely do this one? Or are they all just different in, good in different ways?
Right. So great question.
So they're all good in different ways, and they all have their risks. So if you want to talk all 3 real quick at a high level, foster care, from a financial perspective, is definitely the best way to go. But the goal of foster care is to reunite the child with their birth family. In Virginia, or in most of the foster care systems, right? It's if they can't return the child to their birth family, they will generally potentially adopt them out to their foster family.
Right, but you can't go into foster care with the notion that you're going to adopt.
Right.
Yeah,
it's completely a wild card. That's not, if I was looking to adopt, that's not the route that I would go. The private adoption route has a little bit more of the unknown. The cost isn't as high as the surrogacy route, but it's, the child is in existence. You match with the birth mother, and you have a much better feeling that is good, that child will be placed with you, and when the child is born. So it depends on your situation. If you have the financial funds available, the surrogacy route was great as well. And I had met a surrogate that's a really good connection with my family and in our families together. So that route was best for me at the time. But for people starting out, the adoption route is a really good process as well.
Yeah. So the surrogacy route, you have so much more control over the genetics, because here you are, you just explained how you charted out, the egg donor and all that, and all the characteristics, and then you have control over your own genetics because the other half is your sperm,
That's right.
And when you also have that control over the medical care, because in the surrogacy contract, the surrogate agrees to, not only abstain from drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, but also from henna and tattoos and skydiving and, running triathlons and everything, and not texting while driving and everything else, and not going to countries with the Zika virus. And so here's all this immense control over the prenatal care, et cetera. But then you have the added cost factor, plus you have that risk of not knowing, is she going to get pregnant? Yeah. So lots of different pros and cons. Does that answer your question, Katie?
It does. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for calling into the show. Great question. Have a great day.
You too.
So talking then about that surrogacy process, let's talk a little bit about cost, because you mentioned, with foster care, there actually are subsidies, including subsidies for the attorney fees to do the adoption piece.
That's right.
So cost-wise, between the private parental placement versus the surrogacy, can you give us some idea of what those numbers look like?
I would say the actual.
Yeah.
So with the private adoption costs, I was figuring somewhere. This is just the engineer side of me. I kind of mapped out the cost structure as well. I was kind of figuring in the $20,000 to $30,000 range, and surrogacy costs, I was figuring $60,000 up, depending on if the egg takes the first time, if the surrogate gets pregnant.
There's medical costs,
charges,
there's
medical
the
costs,
monthly stipend for the carrier,
everything. And so surrogacy was at least double what it was for adoption.
Okay. So to give folks an idea of what those numbers look like. But still, surrogacy in Virginia in that 60 to 70,000 range is a lot of times on the internet when you go look, and I've got some cases that I get from California.
Yes.
And some of those numbers are bumping up, 120, 150,000, and which can be super expensive. So that even being double the amount of a private placement adoption, still being in that 60-ish range is pretty good, because that's actually approaching the cost of an international adoption, which runs around the $50,000 to $60,000 range as well.
And for the parents that are out there, you much well know that $60,000 is nothing when it comes to childcare and diapers and formula and college funds.
Right. That's 1 year for my son at NYU.
I tell you.
So you talked about the relationship with your gestational carrier and her husband. So tell us a little bit more about how frequently you get together, and what is her relationship with Allie?
She's very involved. Actually, their family is very involved. Even her parents and her sisters have met.
Well, the whole
Allie,
family.
The whole family. They were at our house for Allie's birthday party, and we get together on a very frequent basis. Usually it's on the order of once a month. We actually just met last weekend, and so we have an ongoing, continual relationship. It's like we're connected through Allie because they gave me this amazing gift, but it's like we're family.
Yeah.
And we are, and we treat it like that. And so we see each other generally around holidays. We see each other on birthdays. We get together quite frequently.
And how old is Allie now?
Allie is now 1.
Oh, wow.
No.
Yeah.
Exciting. Can't believe it's been a whole year since she was born.
And how are the boys with Allie?
Oh, they're amazing. They are such big helpers, especially Eli. I mean, Eli's 11, and Eli is a lot more independent now. He's going into middle school next year, and he's just so helpful around the house, so helpful, just doing anything. He can help take care of Allie. Being a single parent, it's quite challenging, and to have the family support that I have, the surrogate support that I have, and also, my two kids, the support that they offer at home on a continuous basis, it's just, I'm very thankful and very blessed.
So how does Allie refer to her gestational mom and her husband?
She very well connected. I mean, she's not speaking or walking yet. I mean, she can say like dada. So
yeah.
She notices me. But we haven't approached like what we call them.
What you're gonna call her? Yeah. It's
right now
my kangaroo mommy.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or,
whatever.
Figure that piece
I know
out. Yeah. Some people do like Auntie, Katie, or just or my tummy mommy.
Tummy mommy.
So that remains to be seen. That piece you're still learning as you go, right?
That's right. It's always a learning process.
So from a stress standpoint, I know you don't get easily stressed, but looking at the 3 different ways of building your family, was any way more stressful than the other?
I think the least stressful method was the surrogacy, because like you were alluding to earlier, you have a lot more control over that process. You have a lot more control of the prenatal conditions, the egg, the sperm, obviously it's yours. You have a lot more control over that. So that was a lot less stressful. The stressful part of that process was, will the egg take the first time?
Right.
Or will we have to go through the IVF process all over again? Because that's a substantial cost.
Right.
Part of that. So if Allie didn't take the first time, we would have had, because none of the eggs survived, we would have had to done the whole process all over again from an IVF perspective, and then that would have just been additional cost. But that's just money.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that loosely. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's just money on the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, that stress of is you have to thaw the egg, you've got to fertilize the egg, and now you've got to see, is the embryo going to form and is it going to grow? And here you are watching these 5 eggs and seeing, are they going to make it? That's stressful. And knowing that one did make it and made Allie was a real miracle.
It was.
Yeah. So how did you explain to AJ and Eli that this woman who is now pregnant is carrying their soon-to-be sister?
The funny thing is they didn't actually ask. We actually haven't even broached that subject yet.
Okay.
Surprising.
Yeah.
I know. I guess they had.
Did you, at some point did you ever introduce them to the gestational mom, the carrier?
Oh yeah, they're very well. They got a good relationship. I think they just look at them as family, like an aunt or an uncle or a really close friend.
And so does Eli, he's 11, does he understand that Allie's gestational mom gave birth to her?
So we're starting to approach that subject now.
Okay.
Because, before the whole, how babies are made subject is starting to come up now.
Okay.
So I hadn't had to approach it until
recently.
Yes. Recently.
The good thing is there are more and more great books out there that kind of use very simple ways of explaining, how babies are made and how sometimes, dad needed a little bit of help and, needed that kangaroo mommy or that possum mommy or whatever, to help out with the process. The number of books that have started to come out for children in the surrogacy world. We always had a lot in the adoption world that helped to explain that process, but it's really interesting. I'm seeing more and more great books coming out to help explain to kids these concepts, because it's tough. You're trying to figure out, what words do I use? How do I explain this? That's
right. And there's also networks out there on Facebook as well, like single dad networks. And so I've actually posted to that before and just saying, because a lot of folks have gone through the similar type experiences. I'm like, hey, dads, does anybody have a good reference book for how to talk about this subject? And then you'll get a whole series of people that respond and say, oh, this is a good book by this person. This is a good book by this person. And so I'd done that before, and I'd actually ordered a couple off of, Amazon.com and had them shipped to the house. And then we can use those and read them as their bedtime stories every night and start to approach subjects that way.
Yeah, because as they grow, here you have 3 children that came into the family in 3 very different ways, and all of them being able to embrace their own way that they came into the family, as well as the ways that the others did,
Right.
becomes increasingly important. So speaking of that, any interest in a 4th child? Because I think when speaking to you at one point earlier, I think we were at court, having to finally get the final order on Allie. You mentioned the possibility of wanting a 4th down the road.
That's right. I am definitely looking forward to that. I definitely say I want at least one more.
Okay.
So not even limiting it to 4.
The growing Lippa family.
I know. And so I think we're actually going to start that process after the summer.
Okay.
So
and which process are you contemplating?
And I think we're going to do the surrogacy
route
okay. Again.
Behind door number 3,
yes.
The surrogacy route wins. Right. So once you bite the bullet and say, okay, I know what the cost is going to be, you do have more control, as we talked about. But now you're going to be back to the drawing board on that donor egg.
That's right. And so if the same donor is available, because none of ideally if the 5 fertilized eggs, if they had survived and we were to freeze them, we could just thaw
you would have had those
and
embryos, right?
And they would have been ready to go. So we have to start that process over again. So if that same donor is available, I'm most likely just going to choose that same donor again, so that we have the same kind of genetics for Allie and the next child. So that's my thought process right now. And then, from the financial standpoint, I'm trying to save money and build up, because I know that expense is coming in the future. So I've kind of set aside money for that.
So I really appreciate you being here today, because you're taking time off of work. We got to get you back to work so that you can continue to build that nest egg to have that 4th child.
Yep.
So, and the surrogate, is there any word there on that process?
Yep. So we've, because we have a really good connection. And so we've kind of talked back and forth, and I just said, hey, and I talked to her a long time ago that I wanted at least one more. And so I just kind of started posing the question to her, like, if it's something you're interested in doing again, that'd be great if we could do it again. If not, that's okay. I totally respect that decision, because I didn't know how hard that was on her from an emotional standpoint. But because we have that connection,
right,
I don't think it's as hard from an emotional standpoint. And so I just asked her if we want to do it again. And so we just recently talked a week before last, and I think that she's going to potentially do it. She asked about timing, and that's what we talked about after summertime, because I said, if you're not able to do it, it's totally okay, totally respect that, but I want to start getting in the process to identify somebody else.
Right, if you're not interested,
because I know what a lengthy process that could have been.
Oh, yeah, because trying to screen the carrier and everything.
Right.
But of course, she, like most carriers, likes being pregnant and has easy pregnancies. Right. And so a lot of women that are surrogates are of that mindset. And so you just need it to kind of keep dropping those little hints. And it sounds like you finally have convinced her. So we have been talking today about building a family 3 different ways. This is attorney Colleen Quinn of Locke & Quinn, interviewing my client, Keith Lippa. If you didn't see the whole show or hear the whole show, remember you can catch it on the Locke & Quinn Facebook page or on the raisingthebarlawtalk.com website. And you can also hear the podcast series on iTunes. Join us next week for the next Raising the Bar Law Talk radio show.
Where's the best news in talk? AM 820, WNTW Chester is the answer.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm Wally Hines in Washington.